Have you ever seen a slime that can breathe fire at the Adventurers Guild? Some guy is making a scene, shouting that he saw exactly that. His buddies are all convinced he's just seeing things. I mean, in this world, how could a lowly slime use magic that powerful? Everyone's just roasting him, asking if he saw the Slime King or something. But right as they're laughing, our main man Yuji walks into the guild to turn in his quest. Seeing him empty-handed, even the receptionist Lily thinks he totally blew the mission. Suddenly, the slime on his shoulder opens its mouth wide and barfs out the healing herbs he gathered. Lily is absolutely floored. She rushes off to tell the branch manager, who's already seen it all. This weird monster Tamer right here, he's always pulling some crazy stunt that leaves everyone speechless. Yuji warns the manager that he ran into some seriously nasty monsters in the forest. Seconds later, someone bursts in screaming that things have gone south. Smoke signals are rising from the woods, and a massive wave of monsters is coming. Yuji checks in with his slime buddies out there, and yep, 10,000 monsters are on the move. They're heading straight for the town. The manager immediately orders all adventurers to evacuate the area, but the adventurers aren't having it. The city is full of defenseless people. If they bail now, the whole place is history. Still, 10,000 monsters is more than they can handle. Saving as many lives as possible is the only real play they have. Yuji quietly raises his hand and says he's got a plan. He pulls some old bones out of the slime's mouth. These are dragon bones, and they can recreate a dragon's breath. But because Yuji's just a Tamer, everyone starts calling BS on him being able to pull off dragon fire. Only that first guy, the one who saw the slime-breathing fire, is still standing there in shock. Once they see Yuji's slimes, the crowd chooses to believe him. I mean, it's not like they have any other choice. The adventurers scramble to the gates, ready to hold the line. Deep in the forest, Yuji's white wolf is busy rounding up all the scattered slimes. The first wave of monsters hits the gate, and it turns into a total brawl. Yuji heads to the roof and pulls up his skill panel. He scrolls through a dizzying list of magic spells, searching for something that can wipe out a crowd while keeping the town safe. Suddenly, the horned girl pings him, saying there's someone suspicious nearby. The guy places a red stone on the ground. Using shared vision, Yuji sees the magic stone and realizes this guy is the one summoning the monsters. By using a magic circle, Yuji can share his magic with the slimes, so the slime hitches a ride with the girl's ability and teleports right above the guy in black. Yuji traps him in a magic net instantly. Then he uses a barrier and a dispel spell to smash the stone. Seeing his plan go up in flames, the guy just downs some poison and ends it right there. The wolf rushes back to the city with the slimes, where the adventurers are really struggling. There are just way too many monsters. They're gonna get worn down eventually, so Yuji sends 3 slimes to back them up. Right as things get hairy for the adventurers, the slimes blast the monsters with fire. Now everyone finally believes that fire-breathing slimes are the real deal. Yuji is swamped, so he calls over Lily, who is peeking from the side. He tells her to go find the manager and get the adventurers to retreat into the city now. The slimes surround the town in a circle. Just as everyone's in place and Yuji's ready to move, he spots 2 people pinned down by a massive monster. They scream at him to just fire the shot anyway, but Yuji isn't about to hit his own guys. The wolf lunges out and rips the monster's throat out, then carries the adventurers back to safety. Yuji drops a massive barrier and lets loose the hellfire of death. With a wave of his hand, he summons flames that could level a whole city. Aside from the town itself, everything else is swallowed by a sea of fire. Everyone's jaw drops, is this really what a sage can do? But casting magic on this scale is a literal death sentence for your mana pool. After that first blast, Yuji's mana is completely in the negatives. And yet some monsters are actually still standing. To keep going, he has to burn his own life force. He knows it's gonna wreck his body, but Yuji forces himself to stand up. He tells the slimes to hit him again. One more blast of hellfire and the monsters are toast. But the strain is too much, and Yuji passes out. Later, the manager leads a team into the woods to investigate. They find the charred guy in black and the broken magic stone. Having survived the nightmare, the adventurers and citizens are throwing a huge rowdy party. They know they owe everything to Yuji for saving the town. Lily brings dinner to Yuji when he finally wakes up. But when she comes back for the tray, Yuji and his crew have already slipped away. He's careful though. He left a slime behind to eavesdrop on the investigation. He needs to know who was really behind this monster riot. He seems to be tied to some mysterious organization. Before long, Yuji arrived in a whole new bustling city. Turns out his buddies have massive appetites, so Yuji has to buy meat by the pound. Suddenly, a commotion broke out in the middle of the street. Word is, the capital sent over a high-level priest. Yuji headed to the Adventurers Guild to register for a party. But once the receptionist saw he was a monster, Tamer, she looked a bit hesitant. I mean, let's be real, that class usually sucks. But when she noticed he had tracking skills, she changed her tune instantly. See, tracking skills can drop a team's mortality rate to under 20%. That makes it a top priority, almost a guaranteed pass. It wasn't long before Yuji met his new crew. This time, he's teamed up with Rhodas Tina and a lancer named Lisa. The second Lisa saw Yuji was just a low-tier monster Tamer. She was totally unimpressed. But honestly, Lisa and Tina actually thought Yuji's tracking skills would be a huge help. After all, their mission is just an investigation avoiding monsters altogether, is the best-case scenario. Truth be told, they weren't exactly fans of Rhodas either. The guy has a terrible reputation. His past teammates either ran away or just vanished. Rhodas only agreed to let Yuji join because he had no other choice. So Yuji joined the squad, and their mission was to pinpoint an Earth Dragon's location. On the surface, Rhodas was leading the charge. But in reality, Yuji had already sent out his Proud Wolf and Slimes to scout ahead. This was the tracking skill he'd mentioned. Pretty soon, the wolf spotted 5 wolf-like monsters 2 kilometers ahead. Now, with their current strength, they could easily take them out. But Yuji had them stay put and simply relayed the intel to his teammates. He figured he should at least report it so he didn't look totally useless. Little did he know, as soon as Rhodas heard there were monsters, he took off like a shot. I'll give it to him, the guy's actually got some skills. He wiped them all out in seconds. Everyone started looking at Yuji in a new light. The first day of the investigation was slow, and by nightfall they were camping by the river. The 2 girls were super curious about Yuji's tracking ability. One of them kept pestering him about how he learned it, but Yuji didn't really feel like talking. Rhodas stepped in to bail him out. He even played the gentleman during watch duty, making sure the girls got the easiest shifts. Yuji used to be a total corporate slave back at a toxic company. One day, after working way too much overtime, he woke up in another world with a built-in system. To top it off, he ended up as a monster Tamer, the most looked down upon class. He caught a random slime on a whim, and just like that, it became his first partner. The slime led him to a small hut in the woods packed with all sorts of magic books. Thanks to his system, Yuji could learn everything with just a single glance. Then his slime friend called over a whole bunch of its buddies. They all wanted to be tamed by him, plus once they became his partners, as long as a slime flipped through a book, he'd learn the skills right along with them. The speed of his progress was insane. Before long, his status screen showed. A second-class sage. Even the slimes started talking. And believe it or not, it's only been 1 week since all that started. Suddenly, Yuji was nudged awake by a slime. Rhodas, who was supposed to be on guard duty, was gone. Now Proud Wolf was tracking him from the shadows. He realized Lisa and Tina were also secretly tailing him. Both groups almost got caught by Rhodas, but luckily a slime used a shadow skill to make a noise and draw his attention away. Rhodas bolted through the forest until he finally reached a hidden tent. He met up with his real boss, and get this, they were discussing selling off Lisa and Tina. That's right, Rhodas is actually a human trafficker who lures people in. He specifically targets people who aren't that strong, sneaking his way into low-profile adventurer parties. Once he's gained their trust, he waits for the perfect moment to quietly sell off his teammates. By now, Yuji had already caught on to the whole scheme. That's exactly how his previous partners went missing. He even expected Tina and Lisa to follow him, and now he was just waiting to spring the trap and take them both out. His boss told him to hurry it up. According to legend, when the moon turns blue, that's when true evil descends. Tina and Lisa knew they couldn't just rush in, so they planned to head back and strategize. But then they accidentally tripped a trap around the camp. With their cover blown, they had no choice but to fight. However, when Rhodas and his guys rushed out of the tent, they came face to face with a terrifying monster. It looked horrifying. Everyone was too scared to move and prepared to retreat. Of course, that monster was just Proud Wolf and the Slimes, acting together to scare the life out of them. Seeing the guys retreat back into the tent, Yuji immediately ordered the Slimes to surround the area. He cast a freezing spell, instantly turning the entire tent into a massive block of ice. One of the Slimes then stuffed the boss right into its mouth and spat him out right in front of Yuji. When Lisa and Tina took a closer look, they couldn't believe it. This guy was a notorious bandit leader from the wanted posters. Talk about a catch. It turns out Yuji's skills go way beyond just tracking, but Yuji was still hesitant to reveal his true power, mostly because of his past life as a corporate slave. Back then, if he finished his work early, his coworkers would just dump their own messes on him. But since Tina and Lisa never tried to force him to use his abilities, he figured he could actually trust them. Even though they were down a fighter, he could still use his tracking to keep them away from any monsters. The 2 girls were just about to look for a place to camp when Yuji tosses a slime straight into the air to get a 360-degree wide-angle view. He finds the absolute perfect spot to set up camp. And that is not all. The slimes can actually help light fires, pitch tents, cook meals, and even pull sentry duty. They are basically the ultimate travel buddies. The two girls are just standing there completely speechless. Thinking back to that bandit leader's prophecy, Yuji is a bit worried about what this calamity actually is. Later, he heads to the guild to test his mana. But man, he straight up shatters the crystal ball. Then he pulls off chantless magic for the combat test, scaring the absolute crap out of everyone. See, chantless magic is high-tier stuff, and usually it is supposed to be weaker. Yuji actually thought they were complaining he was too weak. So he recites the chant and tries one more time. With a massive boom, that giant boulder is blown into tiny little pieces. So last time Yuji joined an adventuring party to hunt down an earth dragon. But he did not expect that his teammates were actually scumbag human traffickers. But thanks to his slime pals, he rounded them all up in one go. Now Yuji is back on the road with the girls. They have arrived in the land of wind. This canyon is pretty unique. Every now and then, a massive gust of wind blows down from the mountains. People call it the earth dragon's breath. As the team moves forward, the slimes still have not picked up any sign of the dragon. Yuji is busy trying to find a weaker spell to use, so he low-key scrolls through his massive list of magic. He finds a spell that can limit his mana and lets the slimes start grinding on some low-level mobs. He is just thinking about how handy this weakened magic is. Meanwhile, Tina is getting suspicious. Like, why have they not seen a single monster after walking for so long? Turns out the slimes already wiped them all out. The girls' minds are officially blown. How the heck are these slimes so strong? Is he raising some kind of demon lord slime or something? Suddenly, the sky turns this creepy dark purple and a massive vortex swirls in the clouds. Something starts falling from the center, crashing right into the forest. With a sound like a nuclear explosion, the trees and rocks for miles around are just vaporized. The sky clears up in an instant, but then a massive blue dragon lets out a deafening roar. Yuji knows this is bad news. He immediately tells the white wolf to pull back the slimes. That dragon is only 1 kilometer behind them, and its power way beyond any earth dragon. We are talking a straight-up disaster-class monster. They haul ass toward the Valley of Wind. Sea monsters hate the wind coming out of there. So for the last 100 years, no powerful monsters have ever shown up. But just to be safe, Yuji still sends the wolf and slimes ahead to clear the path. The slimes start blasting off all kinds of magic one after another. By the time the girls catch up, all they see are monster corpses. The wolf was being chased by a giant bear, looking pathetic as hell, until a slime drops a fireball and turns that bear into a literal BBQ. Before they know it, the wolf has made it out of the canyon. But right then, the ground inside the canyon starts shaking violently, and a massive monster bursts out from the dirt. It appears right in front of Yuji and the others. Yep, it is the earth dragon they have been looking for. The two girls lose it and start running. I mean, their job was just to investigate the dragon, not fight the damn thing. But Yuji, he just stands there totally chill, like he does not have a care in the world. An earth dragon, huh? Let's see if I can even dent you. Yuji calls his slimes together and fires off some weak magic. But the dragon's scales are crazy tough. His attacks are like a light tickle to it. So Yuji decides to kick it up a notch, but he does not want to go totally overboard. While he is debating it, the pissed-off earth dragon swings its tail, launching huge rocks at the girls. Luckily, the slimes jump in and block the hit just in time. The dragon curls up and starts rolling toward him like a runaway truck. The slimes positioned on the canyon walls all fire their acid shots at once. Yuji is backed up against the cliff with nowhere to go. But just as the dragon lunges at him, a massive blast of wind erupts from the gap in its teeth. Dust fills the air, blinding everyone. Yuji uses light magic to spot the dragon, then hits it with his ultimate move, Hellfire of Destruction. That terrifying fire and explosion swallow the entire canyon in a split second. When the girls finally come out to check the damage, that poor earth dragon has been blown into a literal skeleton. They are completely stunned. Tina thinks Yuji somehow used underground minerals to trigger some massive explosion. Little does she know he literally conjured that blast with his bare hands. But Yuji is not about to explain himself. The girls head back to the guild feeling pretty proud. I mean, who would have thought? Not only did they crush the mission, but they also caught the high-value bandit leader. When the slime spits out the dragon bones, the receptionist's jaw hits the floor. Someone actually killed an earth dragon in the Valley of Wind. The higher-ups are notified immediately. Between the dragon and the bandits, the team clears over 10 million. But now, the branch manager has his eye on Yuji and drags him into a strategy meeting about the blue dragon. Since Yuji just got back from the site, the manager asks him for a detailed description. So Yuji pulls out some support magic called magic transcription and copies the dragon's image onto paper. These people have never seen printing before. Everyone was blown away, calling it a miracle. The priest then pulled out an ancient book of myths that detailed the legend of this blue dragon. The dragon's shadow swallowed the sky, growing rapidly as the darkness crept in. It could wipe out an entire continent in 3 days, a literal walking disaster. Just as everyone was losing hope, a divine messenger appeared. All hope rested on his shoulders to take down the blue dragon. But there was a catch. The ancient records didn't say a word about how the messenger actually won. No one knew. Fast forward to 30 years ago, during a summer solstice when the sun, moon, and stars all aligned, the church in the Holy Capital held a ritual meant to trigger 30 years later, which was exactly 1 week ago. It was a summoning ritual for a god. Technically a week ago, a deity with world-ending power should have been summoned. But instead of a god appearing, the blue dragon showed up. Meanwhile, Yuji, who had just reincarnated into this world a week ago, was playing it cool. Suddenly, the sky turned pitch black again, before quickly returning to normal. From what his slimes observed every time it went dark, the blue dragon got even bigger. To stop the world from ending, the branch leader decided they'd move out first thing tomorrow and throw everything they had at the dragon. Yuji went to grab a bite with his slimes and found out Tina and Lisa joined the raid too. The priest tracked down Yuji, claiming he'd received a divine sign to give him a certain dagger. Yuji checked it out and saw it could focus magic power, super handy stuff. He took it planning to join the hunt tomorrow. He knew many people would likely lose their lives in the fight. The slimes reported that the dragon was still growing. This reminded Yuji of the aftermath of his earlier test. After obliterating a massive boulder, he'd asked the instructor if his magic was weird, meaning, was it too weak? The instructor was speechless. Too weak. Dude, it's way too strong, like absolutely broken. Yuji finally realized he was actually kind of a big deal. He decided to hunt the dragon under the cover of night. Once he hit the coordinates, he left a slime behind to share its vision and prepped his attack. Hellfire had too big an area of effect, so he opted for destructive flare instead. He blasted the dragon, but once the smoke cleared, the beast didn't have a scratch on it. The dragon let out a roar, its 6 horns glowing as it fired a massive chaotic laser barrage. Luckily, Yuji managed to block the hit with a mana barrier. The dragon bulked up again. It seemed to be absorbing energy by trashing the forest. Sniping from a distance wasn't working, so he had to go in for close combat. Yuji drew the priest's dagger. The blade allowed the user to concentrate all their magic into a single point. If he could focus that massive hellfire into one explosive strike, the power would be insane. It was time to give it a shot. Yuji leapt off the cliff with his slimes and the white wolf. The dragon attacked again, and Yuji had to stack multiple layers of armor just to tank it. As the dragon opened its mouth for a breath attack, Yuji tossed a slime at it. A magic teleport circle snapped open, and suddenly Yuji was right under the dragon. Using a jump, boost, and a barrier as a foothold, he vaulted right above the beast. Before the dragon could spot him, he had his slimes in the distance, spam fireballs to draw its attention. Yuji seized the moment and jammed the dagger right into the dragon's eye. Hellfire erupted, slamming the beast straight into the ground. But even that didn't finish it. The dragon whipped its tail, sending Yuji flying through several stone pillars before he finally stopped. That hit drained his mana to 0 and cut his health in half. The enraged dragon lunged at him, jaws wide open, and Yuji barely managed to throw up a defense. He was desperate for a finishing move when a countdown for a chance popped up on his UI. With his back against the wall, he decided to bet everything on it once the dragon stopped its assault. Yuji raised his left arm, and a pillar of holy light crashed down, pinning the dragon. While it was paralyzed, Yuji dashed in instantly. Burning through the last of his health, he drove the blade deep into the dragon's neck. With the terrifying power of hellfire, he swung, and the blue dragon's head was severed, causing the monster to completely vanish. Exhausted, Yuji took his companions back to rest. Early the next morning, the branch leader knocked on his door. According to the priest, the blue dragon had been successfully defeated. Apparently, that's what his divine revelation said. The branch leader knew Yuji was the one who did it, but he didn't call him out in public. Instead, he just hoped that in the future, he's told to rely more on the guild and lean on his teammates now that the blue dragon hunt is finally over. It's time for Yuji to head to a new town for some fresh adventures. And based on the girl's advice, he decides to hit up Required to make sure he get dragged into any more unnecessary drama. Yuji double checks with everyone to ensure there's absolutely nothing weird going on there. Only then does he say goodbye and start his journey. Man, this protagonist is a total breath of fresh air. He's an overpowered hero who actually doesn't care about building a harem. But halfway there, the forest spirit Laya suddenly sends him a message. Right where Yuji took down the blue dragon, a bunch of mysterious mushrooms have started sprouting up. The red ones can be used to make mana recovery potions, and the blue ones are for mana reversal. This stuff can completely flip your mana state, basically restoring your remaining magic levels to exactly where they were 10 minutes ago. The second he hears this, Yuji orders his slimes to strip the place clean and grab every single mushroom. The spirit then starts brewing the potions, but there's a snag. The mana in the mushrooms is so dense that the resulting quality is way off. So Yuji introduces the concept of distillation to this fantasy world. Combined with the slime's water purification magic, they manage to get crystal clear water. Now, this spirit girl is a forest dryad that Yuji found and saved a while back. When they first met, she was deathly ill because of a cursed magic stone. Yuji shared his own mana with her and managed to break the curse on the stone. Suddenly, a swarm of monsters burst out of the stone, so Yuji just trapped them in a barrier and torched the whole lot. Since then, she's seen him as her hero. Later, he notices the cloudy potion color looks a lot like the magic stone because the stone's power contains what they call the dragon's grace. After a dragon falls, these medicinal mushrooms grow soaked in pure mana. But if they fall into the wrong hands, they can turn into a curse that wipes out entire forests. Once the distilled water is ready, the dryad successfully brews the perfect mana potion. She's so happy she gives Yuji a huge hug to celebrate. But our guy is a total block of wood and doesn't react at all. After handing over the potions, she heads back and Yuji continues his trek with his wolf and slimes. Just then, a thick fog starts rolling through the forest. The wolf picks up a human scent and they follow it until they stumble upon a small village. Even though there are people living there, the moment they see him, they all put on these incredibly creepy forced smiles. It's enough to give anyone the chills. Yuji tries to leave, but the village chief stops him and insists he stay acting all friendly and inviting him into his home. He even puts out a spread of food, but Yuji tells him he's not hungry. Once the chief hears that Yuji is just lost, he finally seems to breathe a sigh of relief. But when Yuji looks around, he catches a bunch of villagers staring at him through the windows. Realizing this place is bad news, Yuji gets out of there as fast as he can. But as soon as he's gone, the chief contacts a mysterious figure to report in mentioning they plan to harvest the dragon's grace the very next day. It looks like they have no idea that the slimes already picked every last mushroom. Meanwhile, Yuji finally makes it to record, only to find out things are pretty weird here too. He needs some firewood to cook a meal, so he pulls an axe out of his inventory. With just one swing, an entire row of trees comes crashing down. In no time at all, he's got a pile of wood as tall as a mountain. But since the wood is freshly cut, it's too damp to burn. It needs to be dried out first, so he scrolls through his monster skills and finds one where the slimes can absorb moisture. He sets the slimes on the wood and they suck it dry in an instant. Then, one slime opens its mouth wide and sucks in all the firewood for storage. And he did all that work just because he wanted a hot meal. Talk about a struggle, your typical overworked salaryman gets reincarnated into another world, only to become what looks like a bottom-tier mage. But with his army of slimes, he's punching out bandits and kicking dragons. Even though he's overpowered, Yuji isn't like those other show-off protagonists who only care about flirting. He just wants to avoid trouble and live a quiet life. I'm starting to wonder if he's from the same hometown as Detective Conan, because disaster follows him everywhere. He finally reaches the legendary City of Food, required, but because the temperature has plummeted, the whole place has turned into a city of ice. There's a massive shortage of firewood for heat, which means the restaurants can't even fire up their stoves. On the flip side, Yuji is so desperate for a bite to eat that he went out and chopped a ton of wood himself. He lugs it all back to the restaurant, but after the chef checks it, he says he can't use wood that's too dry. It burns way too hot, which makes it impossible to cook a decent meal. But that's an easy fix. He just has his slimes add a bit of moisture back in. When he hands over the retreated wood, the chef is absolutely floored. He can't believe such a perfect piece of firewood actually exists. He fires up the stove immediately. When he asks Yuji how much he has, the slime opens its mouth and spits out a massive, mind-blowing mountain of wood. The chef and the waitress are totally stunned. I mean, are these slimes just a little too versatile? The chef shows off his skills and makes Yuji a steak. And it's so delicious, Yuji practically ascends to heaven right there. It's easily the best thing he's ever eaten, but the best is yet to come. The place is famous for its stew, but they couldn't make any because time was tight. Plus, the city's fuel supply is running dangerously low. They didn't want to be the only ones wasting resources just to cook a meal. Yuji got the memo and said he'd be back tomorrow. He headed to the Adventurers Guild, which was packed with requests for firewood. Yuji took the job. His logic was simple: if the city has enough fuel, then he finally gets to eat. The firewood had to be a specific size and shape, so Yuji headed east to find the instructor Ugarte to learn the ropes. The whole city needs 5 tons of wood a day, and they're seriously short-handed. Even with people coming from nearby towns to help, it's still not enough. Thinking back to the village he passed on his way here, Yuji asked if they were coming to help out. But Ugarte told him that place has been abandoned for ages, nobody lives there. So, who were those villagers Yuji saw? Looking at how skinny Yuji appeared, Ugarte didn't expect much. But then the kid took one swing of his axe, and a whole row of trees snapped like toothpicks. Then, as if it were a game, he effortlessly chopped them into firewood and stacked them perfectly. He finished the whole task in under 1 minute, leaving the group of buff guys there completely speechless. They wanted to say something, but since his work was literally flawless, Ugarte didn't even know where to start. Yuji turned into a total forest assassin with that axe, while his slimes handled the drying and hauling. He produced so much wood, the guild couldn't even fit it all. The city needs 5 tons a day. He chopped a 3-day supply just like that. The slimes kept spitting out tons and tons of wood into the yard. But Yuji felt like it still wasn't enough. He kept his crew working, chopping from sunrise to sunset. His efficiency was so insane, it made Ugarte question his entire life. The next day, as a thank you, the restaurant finally served Yuji their signature stew. It tasted so good that Yuji and his slimes were practically moved to tears. It felt like their souls were ascending. They even wanted seconds, but the chef had some bad news. Apparently, this wasn't even the stew's final form. Lately, the fields where lychia grass grows have been getting trashed by monsters, and all the high-quality grass was eaten. If he could get the good stuff, the dish would be even better. Now, the goal was clear. Messing with a foodie's meal is a sin. The White Wolf and the Slimes went on a rampage through the forest, taking out over 50 monsters in no time. That's when Yuji spotted a strange-looking orb in the woods. When he touched it, it started absorbing his mana, and then it clicked. These were cursed magic stones created by an evil organization. Because the stones suck up all the mana, the surrounding area loses its energy, which causes the temperature to drop. That's exactly why this town has been so freezing lately. The stone even had someone else's mana lingering on it. It was definitely man-made. After breaking the curse on the stone, Yuji ordered the slimes to scout the area. Unbelievably, they found a total of 108 magic stones hidden in the forest, all concentrated in one specific zone. Judging by the layout, something had to be hidden at the center. Looking closer, he realized the forest's growth pattern was super weird, like it was a deliberate disguise. Yuji told his team to back off because he was about to blow the whole place up. A forest can be replanted, but if those cursed stones stay, it'll never recover. He unleashed his End of Fire spell, and the explosion left a massive crater in the ground. At the bottom of that pit, an old iron door appeared. Yuji was pumped to go down and explore. He was going to save that city, mostly because their food was just that damn good. He pulled the door open, revealing a high-tech magic stone factory underneath. There were even stones mid-production on the machines, but as soon as Yuji showed up, they lost their glow. 2 guys came rushing over to check on things, realized the mana injection device was acting up, and ran off to tell someone named Lord Hubby. Yuji quietly shadowed them, playing it safe. The slimes impulsively hopped inside first, so Yuji had to cast invisibility on them before tracking them from above. The slimes followed the 2 men into a room and squeezed through the door crack, but after a few steps, a wall blocked their path. The men had vanished. Noticing the switches on both sides of the wall, Yuji commanded the slimes to pull them at the same time. Sure enough, the wall opened up. The slimes climbed up a ladder and eventually emerged in a village. Meanwhile, Yuji followed the slimes' trail and ended up at the edge of a cliff. Right below him was that creepy, abandoned village they had passed earlier. Seeing the cloaks and symbols the people were wearing, it was clear the whole village was a cult. Members of the Sanctuary of Salvation were hiding out in this ghost town, secretly mass-producing magic stones. But Yuji's massive strike had shattered the source of the curse underground, leaving all their magic stones incomplete and useless. Master Harvey, the leader posing as the village chief, was so terrified by the news that his pupils were literally shaking. Just how powerful was Yuji's attack? People actually thought a massive meteor had crashed down and leveled the place. Harvey could only curse his bad luck, immediately ordering his members to the forest to recover the 108 cursed gemstones. He told them to kill anyone who saw them. Since the source of the curse was destroyed, they weren't planning on staying in this village anyway. It's hilarious, though, you won't find a single one, because Yuji happened to destroy all 108 of them. Not only that, Yuji ordered his slimes to surround the village, searching every inch to see if there were any innocent villagers left. Very quickly, the slimes discovered a study glowing with an eerie green light, so they quietly snatched up all the books and documents inside. Meanwhile, the slimes lying in wait in the forest captured the magic stone search party. But once they were caught, every single one of them chose to commit suicide by taking poison. Back in the study, there was a secret room that wouldn't open, and instead of a typical mechanism, there were 5 bright lamps hanging on the wall. Yuji had a sudden spark of inspiration, having his slimes stand in front of each of the 5 lamps. He then launched a tracking wind magic, and sure enough, the door swung open. Behind that door was actually a small vault. Just then, someone came to check and realized the files and funds were all gone. With no word from the search party, Harvey immediately realized the destruction of the curse source wasn't some natural disaster. It was man-made. Just as Yuji was thinking, he might as well wipe them all out since he was already exposed, he suddenly heard a cult member ask, "Since the enemy is so powerful, why didn't he just kill us directly? Is that even a question? He must have discovered that device." Harvey's imagination suddenly went into overdrive. If everyone in this village were to be killed, it would trigger the fire of universal purification, which would burn everything to absolute ash. He was convinced the intruder realized this, and that's why he hadn't made a move. What a shame, looks like we can't roast these cultists after all. While Yuji was feeling disappointed, Harvey's brain kept spinning. There were only 5 of them left in the village, plus the unknown intruder. If they all committed suicide right now, the intruder would definitely be burned to death. So they pulled out their blades for a group suicide pact. The slimes watching were completely baffled. These guys are taking themselves out before the fight even starts. Cults really do rot your brain. As soon as they died, the fire of universal purification erupted. The entire village began to shake violently. Yuji never expected these people to actually kill themselves, but the slimes were still in the village. He urgently gathered them all together, wrapping them in a sturdy barrier. Then he released an explosive magic, using the blast force to launch the slimes back to safety. Immediately after, he set up a 3-layer barrier around the village. A split second later, terrifying green flames geysered up from deep underground. It instantly leveled the entire village and broke through the first layer of the barrier. But the remaining barriers weren't going to hold for long. Yuji frantically scrolled through his menu for a high-level barrier, but there was nothing. Soon, the flames shattered the second layer, and the final one was about to snap. Yuji had a sudden stroke of genius. Combining curse-breaking and ice magic, he created an absolute isolation sandstorm array. The moment the third barrier shattered, the sandstorm array activated a 4-way seal, trapping the scorching flames once again. To maintain the barrier, Yuji's mana points dropped into the negatives again, and his health points started falling too. The terrifying fire expanded the array to its breaking point. Yuji poured every ounce of his strength into holding on. Finally, with a pillar of fire shooting toward the sky, the flames were locked within the array. Where the village once stood was now nothing but a deep crater. Yuji's stats had reached their absolute limit. Luckily, he managed to resolve the crisis without any casualties. When Yuji returned to town, he found everyone waiting for him. He'd been gone way too long after the monster hunt. Everyone was worried sick. There had been 2 massive explosions in the forest, and people suspected it was a meteor strike. Perhaps due to the explosions, the cold front over the city weakened. By the next morning, the usual warmth had returned. Ugarte and the receptionist invited Yuji to a celebration party. It wasn't until Yuji arrived that he was told he was actually the guest of honor. Thanks to all the firewood he'd chopped, they would be fine even if it got cold again. Yuji couldn't really say no, so he raised a glass with them. Since Yuji had taken down the magical beasts, the restaurant finally managed to get their hands on top-tier leisha grass to make a special stew. Yuji took just 1 bite and fainted from pure tearful happiness. By the time he woke up, it was already evening. Yuji began investigating the books and letters he brought back from the village. However, as soon as he opened the scrolls and letters, the writing on them automatically vanished. In the end, only one thing remained an assassination hit list for the outside world. And the very last name on that list was none other than Yuji himself. An elite assassination squad was already hunting him down. Now that our god-tier MC is being targeted by killers, what's he going to do? Will he charge straight at them and crush them with his overwhelming power? Should he just go and wipe out their whole hideout? Nah, Yuji has 10 years of experience as a corporate drone, so he decides to just turn around and run. After finding his name on an assassination list, Yuji leaves the warming city of Rickard. Based on a recommendation from the receptionist, he heads for Boginia, a place famous for making magical gear. But while the killers are stalking Yuji, his slimes are stalking them right back. The white slime is dying to jump into the fight, but the purple one shuts it down with a terrifying, "Don't even think about it" look. Yuji figures he might still need to get info from those guys, plus an adventurer dying suddenly would definitely grab the guild's attention. The assassins plan to tail him for a day to see if he's a threat. If he seems harmless and doesn't do anything suspicious, they'll just leave him alone and move on to their next target. Little do they know, Yuji already knows everything they're planning. Taking these 2 out would be a piece of cake, but Yuji doesn't want to get flagged by that crazy cult. So he decides to play weak, making them think he's just a tiny, pathetic, and helpless mage. Once he reaches Boginia, Yuji and his slimes walk into the best monster gear shop in town, only to get kicked out because he's flat broke. He accidentally bumps into a guy on the street and apologizes like he's terrified, then heads over to a street vendor. Since he can't even afford food, he summons his slimes to go pick up loose change. Then he hits a bar to act like a pathetic drunk. Even though Yuji is doing his best to look like a total loser, the assassins are still being cautious. They decide to watch him a bit longer. Since he has to commit to the act, he goes to the Salade Guild and picks up a quest to hunt down some rushing bulls to show off his skills. If he just destroys the enemies, he'll look too strong. So Yuji decides not to use any magic attacks this time. Don't forget his job is a mage, and his supposed style is using illusion magic. Yuji just pushes Proud Wolf forward and tells him to go for it. But the wolf has only ever been an errand boy for the slimes and has never fought alone. As soon as he sees a red bull charging at him, he gets so scared he closes his eyes and just bashes into it. And somehow the bull actually goes down. Proud Wolf is stunned, like, wait, did I really do that? Then he suddenly remembers that he used to be a total beast. It's just that right when he started out, he ran into Yuji, failed his little ambush, and got tied up like a holiday turkey. He ended up begging for his life with tears and snot running down his face. Since then, he's basically been a delivery boy, and the poor guy almost forgot what his actual job was. Now that he realizes he's actually strong, Proud Wolf gets hyped and takes out the other two bulls in no time. Seeing such a powerful monster, the assassins watching from the shadows get suspicious. Yuji realizes things are going south, so he secretly heals the bull. The bull gets back up and lunges at Proud Wolf, but the wolf is so pumped up on adrenaline that he's not backing down. So Yuji doubles down and buffs the bull's defense. He tries to use these double buffs to help the enemy and screw over his teammate, but he accidentally overdoes it. The bull basically mutates. It smashes right through a small hill and starts chasing Proud Wolf all over the place. Yuji realizes he played around way too much. He tries to give Proud Wolf the same buff, but the wolf flat out refuses. This is a battle of pride between monsters, and he won't let anyone interfere. He's the lone wolf of wolves after all. Proud Wolf's body swells with power. He bared his fangs and charges at the bull with a roar. Finally, after a brutal struggle, he defeats his opponent and protects his dignity. The assassins see this and think, if he had to struggle that hard against a low-level enemy, that wolf isn't anything special. And just like that, they finally drop their guard. Suddenly, the bull on the ground snaps its eyes open and charges straight at Yuji. Reflexively, Yuji summons a giant sword and slices the bull dead in one go. A second later, he realizes he messed up big time. He basically just blew his cover. He stands there, frozen, nervously, waiting for the assassin's verdict. The killers are caught off guard too. They didn't expect Yuji to be able to summon a sword and fight like that. They stare him down, but maybe because he acted so pathetic before. The assassins finally decide that Yuji is just an ordinary mage and doesn't pose any real threat to them. They officially give up on assassinating him. Yuji finally breathes a sigh of relief. But just as he's about to call back his slimes, he hears them discussing their next target. After reporting to the church that Yuji isn't a threat, they receive their next mission. Investigate the village of Mishi, which was supposedly purified and destroyed by the fire of all things. Their goal is to kill Stale Geis. That guy Geis is the one who gave Yuji a dagger, back during the Blue Dragon crisis. Now, Yuji can't just sit back and watch. You can come for me. But don't you dare touch my friends. Before the two unlucky assassins can even react, the slimes have already frozen them into solid blocks of ice. The next day, Yuji heads back to the armor shop. As soon as the clerk sees him, he thinks, ugh, this broke loser again. Especially since he's looking for gear for a slime. He starts tossing Yuji out with a nasty attitude. But then the shop owner Geiger takes a good look at the slimes, and his eyes practically pop out of his head. He rips into his son for being so clueless. Turns out Yuji is the most powerful customer they've ever had. Walk through those doors. Unfortunately, they don't have any monster gear that can handle that kind of strength. They could do a custom order, but there's a major hurdle. See, Yuji's mana is so insane that the materials they have in the shop just won't cut it for the armor. The son thinks his old man is just pulling his leg. I mean, come on, they're just slimes, right? Sure, a single monster might not be much on its own, but a monster's power and its Tamer are two halves of the same whole. As long as they're with Yuji, these little guys are the strongest monsters alive. But because that power is so overwhelming, normal armor would just shatter under the pressure. The owner explains they need something way tougher, then pulls out a lesser fire dragon jewel. He says it's the absolute best material you can find in this whole region. But even a fire dragon jewel isn't enough. They need something even rarer, a lesser blue dragon jewel. There are plenty of lesser fire dragons living near the volcano not far from here, but only a few blue dragons are mixed in with them. They're incredibly dangerous. Even teams that specialize in hunting fire dragons can't touch them. But if Yuji can get his hands on a blue dragon jewel, the master can whip up some top-tier armor right away. Yuji hears this and is like, wait, is that all? He figures he'll just go hunt a few. Oh, and he casually asks if there are any great fire dragons around. The answer is a definite yes. But in all these years, nobody has ever actually managed to take one down. Man, why would you go and set a flag like that for our protagonist? He'll probably have a dragon's head on your doorstep by tomorrow morning. Anyway, Yuji heads to the Adventurers Guild. He picks up a massive stack of fire dragon hunting quests. I mean, it doesn't matter how many monsters there are when he can just nuke them with magic, right? But the girl at the counter stops him. She tells him magic is actually useless against them because they have a special divine protection. Those fire dragons have crazy high magic resistance, plus their scales are like tank armor. Physical attacks barely leave a scratch either. Their only real weakness, water. You have to douse them with a ton of it. It takes about 10 or so liters of water to bring one down. The hard part is carrying all that water. Using magic to create it would drain way too much mana. No one can pull that off. Yuji just plays it cool and says, "Don't worry, I'm pretty good at magic." Next, the receptionist hands him a bounty for some piranhas. To get to the dragon habitat, he has to cross a river crawling with them. She warns him it's super dangerous, but Yuji just gives a casual "oh" and takes that quest too. Their destination is an active volcano, and Yuji's a bit worried it might blow at any second. The slimes volunteer to go check it out, and before long, they come back with a fire slime in tow. Naturally, the fire slime joins the squad. They finally make it to the river where the piranhas are supposed to be hiding. They say the piranhas lurk deep underwater to ambush you, but the slimes aren't picking up any monster vibes at all. Yuji wants to just jump in and grab them, but then he remembers slimes can't swim. So Yuji uses his mana to weave the slimes together, turning them into one giant net. He tosses them in like he's going fishing. Now he can see everything going on down there. That's when the slimes spot a pitch-black cave at the bottom of the river. Two of them dive in to check it out, and a few seconds later, they lure out a massive piranha. It opens its terrifying maw to take a bite, but the slime net snaps shut, trapping it tight. Yuji gives the line a hard yank. The piranha goes flying through the air. It manages to break free and lunges at Yuji with its jaws wide open, but Yuji instantly hits it with a freezing spell. He traps the fish in a block of ice, but surprisingly, it shatters the ice in a split second. Well, if it didn't want to stay in one piece, Yuji had no choice but to turn it into grilled fish. With the piranha problem solved, they head back toward the volcano. Along the way, he ends up recruiting a whole bunch of fire slimes, and soon enough, he spots his first lesser fire dragon. Yuji starts to feel like something's a bit off. Usually, the slimes are the first to tell him when a monster is near. But today, they're just shaking like leaves. To a slime, a fire dragon is the stuff of nightmares. Since they're too scared to move, Yuji decides to handle this one himself. He finds a lucky target and just starts dumping cold water on it. It didn't take much effort at all to take it down, and a glowing jewel drops right out. Once the slimes see how easily it went down, they aren't scared anymore. Suddenly, they're acting tough, like they could take out 3 of those weaklings with a single splash. With the slimes putting in the work, Yuji mops up every fire dragon in the area. And then he finally finds it a rare lesser blue dragon. Wait, is it just me, or is this thing actually purple? Why not call it a lesser purple dragon? Either way, it definitely looks way tougher than the normal ones. Yuji immediately commands 10 slimes to surround the little blue dragon and soak it from every angle. No matter how tough a dragon is, it can't handle an overwhelming water attack like that. Soon enough, the little blue guy is completely pinned down. It was putting up quite a fight, and even rapid cooling ice magic wasn't doing the trick. Well, if that's the case, Yuji isn't going to hold back. He has the slimes huddle together and stacks 10 layers of freezing magic on top of each other. That finally did it. They froze the little blue dragon solid. A massive jewel rolled out, and the slimes happily gobbled up the dragon's body. Then it was back to the volcano to mess with the other small fire dragons. By nightfall, the request for 220 dragons was totally finished. They even took out some piranhas while they were at it. The receptionist was absolutely stunned, especially since piranhas usually just stay underwater and wait for their prey. No one had ever heard of them hiding away like that, just to be safe. The lady signed an emergency investigation ticket to check out these weird monster movements. That night, Yuji headed back to the shop. He pulled out 2 blue dragon jewels and then literally covered the table with top-tier red dragon jewels. The shop owner got to work and quickly finished the gear for the white wolf and the slimes. With the new gear on, their movement speed was basically off the charts. Once they buffed it, it was 10 times faster than before, and the gear didn't even show a scratch. Then they ran a magic test, and the power was instantly amplified several times over. The results were so crazy, the owner's jaw almost hit the floor. But the gear still couldn't handle that level of magic for long. If they wanted to make the ultimate equipment, they'd need a jewel from a great fire dragon. The problem is, great fire dragons usually hide deep in the volcano's lava and only show their faces once in a blue moon. Just then, the slimes still at the volcano noticed something. Those little fire dragons were starting to get really restless. And thinking back to past incidents, Yuji immediately sent the White Wolf and the Slimes to scout the area for any suspicious characters.
Sure enough, there were two people with heavy packs heading up the volcano when the ground suddenly started shaking violently.
Yuji looked out the window and realized the volcano was about to erupt. And as the lava started flowing, a massive great fire dragon emerged from the heat. Meanwhile, those two shady guys were still making their way up the mountain. Their target was definitely the great fire dragon. They even mentioned another city while they chatted, and Yuji kept a close eye on them from a distance. Yuji commanded the Slimes to cast a magic net, but these guys were no slackers. They dodged the net the very second it dropped. Since the Slimes were invisible, the duo figured it was just a preset trap left by some mage. They tried to act cool and keep moving, but they were secretly waiting for another attack. Sure enough, when the Slimes tried a second ambush, the man flickered away to avoid the net. He stabbed a slime with his sword. Yuji shifted tactics and finally managed to trap them both. And just as he suspected, they were from the Blue Moon of Salvation. Once they were caught, they shouted their slogans and took poison to end it all. Yuji summoned a spirit to check what was inside their wooden barrels. It turned out to be cursed water, which is a bit weaker than cursed magic stones. This wasn't meant to kill the great fire dragon. It was meant to piss it off. After the curse was lifted, Yuji had the Slimes keep watch. They noticed the little fire dragons were starting to lose it again. Right then, the innkeeper knocked on Yuji's door, telling him to get out and evacuate immediately. Apparently, it was about to pour.
Now, when a great fire dragon shows up, it's not supposed to rain this hard. It's only happened once in history.
50 years ago, when the dragon and a massive storm appeared at the same time. The dragon was so enraged by the rain that it nearly wiped out the entire city. Learning from the past, the residents didn't wait around. They started an emergency evacuation before the dragon could lose its temper. But the great fire dragon was already coming down the mountain and heading straight for the city. Everyone thought they were doomed. Yuji had to find a way to stop it. The dragon's weakness is water, and on the path to the city, it would have to cross two rivers. Yuji sent the White Wolf to the first river to see if the water would actually slow the dragon down. Every step the dragon took radiated terrifying heat, making the air around it stiflingly hot. It was so intense, the river water was literally evaporating. The great fire dragon didn't even flinch at the river. It just stepped right in. The heat instantly turned the entire river boiling hot. Ants and steam filled the air everywhere. Usually a few dozen liters of water can take out a small fire dragon, but this beast evaporated an entire river, and it was still going strong. It had no intention of stopping. With the situation this dire, there was no choice but to fight. Buffed with magic, the White Wolf and the Slimes reached the second river before the dragon did. They launched an ultimate freezing spell, dumping everything they had on the dragon, but it barely did anything. Their ice attacks couldn't even stand up to the dragon's lava breath. It was getting way too dangerous to keep going, so Yuji told the wolf to pull back for now. The great fire dragon kept moving and stepped into the second river. If it broke through here, the city was history. But this was exactly the moment Yuji was waiting for. He'd been using a barrier to dam up water in the canyon while the others were fighting. The water level was at its peak. Now all he had to do was wait for the dragon to get into position and release the flood. Water hits like a flash flood, instantly swallowing the fire dragon as it tries to cross the river. The clash of water and lava sends a massive cloud of steam into the air. The dragon finally stops moving, and Proud Wolf goes in to check it out. He finds the beast lying still in the water. Everyone thinks they've finally taken it down, but just as Proud Wolf turns to report back, the fire dragon pulls a fast one and lunges back to life. It blasts a wave of fire right at him, but luckily, Yuji's defensive barrier is up just in time. Now the fire dragon is completely pissed. It turns toward the town and starts charging up a massive fireball. Realizing the beast plans to burn the entire town to the ground, Yuji frantically scrolls through his skill list. He finds a massive area of effect spell, the Curse of Permafrost. It's going to drain a ton of mana. But there's no time to hesitate. The Slimes in their protective gear deploy a massive magic circle, and giant pillars of ice collide head-on with the dragon's fireball. In the end, the dragon can't hold out. It and everything around it are frozen solid before shattering into a million pieces. With the fire dragon finally dead, the sky starts to clear. The Slimes stay behind at the scene and find the fire dragon's orb, along with a very strange device. Yuji takes the massive dragon orb to a shopkeeper and asks him to craft some high-level legendary gear. Yuji tries to claim it's just a slightly large baby dragon orb, but the shopkeeper isn't an idiot. He can tell this adventurer is something special. Afterward, Yuji heads to the Adventurers Guild to ask about Orderion. The receptionist tells him that the city is shrouded in mystery. They have zero ties with other cities, and no adventurer ever wants to go there. As for that weird device found on the mountain, it's an artificial rain system owned by the guild, but the name engraved on it has been scratched off. The next day, after picking up his legendary gear, made from the fire dragon, Yuji says his goodbyes and heads for Orderion. Meanwhile, a shady-looking guy receives a prophecy. The hero shall arrive alongside death. Since our hero knows he's being watched, he sends a slime to tail them. After dealing with the dragon crisis, Yuji and his crew arrive at the Ordar forest. But the moment he enters the city, Yuji notices the vibe is incredibly creepy. Two guys at the guild are staring him down, sensing the tension. He sees there aren't any good quests and leaves, but not before leaving a slime behind to eavesdrop. Sure enough, as soon as he's gone, those two duck into a room to talk. It turns out Yuji's identity has already been leaked. Even though an assassin previously judged him as no threat, one man insists they should take him out now to avoid any future trouble. The other guy disagrees, not wanting to cause a scene. It turns out the guild has been seized by the Blue Moon of Salvation. And if they get caught now, years of their hard work go down the drain. They even worked so hard to get that rain-making device. But even with the rain, the fire dragon was still killed. The two men decide to report everything to Lord Walter first. At the same time, Yuji gets two unexpected visitors. This entire town has already fallen into the hands of the Blue Moon of Salvation. A priest named Styalgeese followed a prophecy to find Yuji and tells him the truth about Walter's past. Long ago, the Blue Moon Church was founded by a man who was then a mercenary priest. He built it to honor his fallen comrades by mimicking church rituals. Over time, displaced people started joining them, and Walter was one of them. Walter seemed incredibly pious and devoted to the faith, so the priest trusted him. He made Walter his right-hand man, never realizing how much raw ambition the man was hiding. Eventually, the priest received an oracle telling him to disband the church. But he didn't want to lose his friends, so he ignored the divine warning. A few days later, the church was attacked and everyone was slaughtered. Only the priest managed to escape thanks to his comrades' sacrifice. The whole point of the attack was to seize the growing church, and Walter was the one secretly pulling the strings. They twisted the church's devotion into a radical ideology with the goal of saving the world. That's how the current Blue Moon of Salvation was formed. Walter definitely has a dark scheme for ruling this region. Since the priest founded the original group, he feels he has to take responsibility. Just moments ago, it received another prophecy. As chaos begins, a foul light shall stain the world. And a messenger shall be sent to bring God's salvation. The blue moon is that foul light that will plunge the world into chaos. The messenger will eventually face Walter, and only the one who can wield the dagger of cases is the true messenger of God. That's right, the messenger is Yuji. But what Yuji doesn't know is that the priest didn't tell him the full prophecy. Word of their meeting is quickly reported to Walter, and it looks like Walter has some plans of his own. He was kneeling in a high-tech room, desperately praying for a sign from above. It didn't take long before he received the exact same oracle as the priest. But there was one thing the priest hadn't told Ryoma. With the leader's death, a massive change is coming. Ryoma was just as confused as anyone. The next day, when he headed to the church to find the priest, he was told they'd already left. By checking in with the slimes he had stationed outside the city, Ryoma quickly tracked the priest down. They'd headed deep into the woods first thing in the morning. Sure enough, the priest and his sidekick were making their way into the heart of the forest. After using holy light to break a curse on an ancient tree, the two of them entered an underground castle through a hollow trunk. Meanwhile, Ryoma used his growing network of slime buddies in the woods to locate that same tree. Compared to the priest's weak magic, Ryoma just blasted it with a high-level dispel and wiped out every last curse on the ancient tree. On the other side, after taking out the cultists guarding the door, the priest and his follower charged in alone, storming the Wings of Redemption headquarters to face Walter. With the leader dead, the sage shall descend. To take Walter down, the priest was determined to follow the divine revelation to the letter, swearing he'd never let the past tragedy repeat itself. Armed cultists quickly surrounded them. When Ryoma finally made it inside, he found the floor littered with defeated cultists. Seriously, if a priest can't throw hands, he's in the wrong profession. But just as Ryoma was about to step over them and head into the castle, one of the downed cultists suddenly lunged out and grabbed one of his slimes. Inside, the priest was going ham on his opponents with his bare fists. But Walter didn't even flinch. A split second later, the priest was suddenly bound by magic and knocked unconscious by a blast of electricity. Turns out his little sidekick John was a total traitor all along. He was just using the priest to lure the messenger in. Walter had orchestrated everything starting from the moment those magic stones were neutralized. Walter had set his plan in motion to find the one person who could stop them. But the enemy's power was just too much. Every monster he sent was wiped out. Then the blue dragon appeared. After that, the priest gave the messenger a dagger, which he used to defeat Lan Long. The priest then hid the messenger's identity, fearing the wings of the blue moon would find out. So he went into hiding with his follower. But during that time, the messenger kept ruining their plans one by one, even the fire dragon sleeping in the lava. They tried using a curse to turn the dragon feral, but it was defeated and the plan failed again. This messenger's power was way beyond anything they expected. He's saved this world time and time again. But it's all coming to an end now. Their plan has reached the next phase. A new god will make their dreams a reality. The priest's hopes are about to crumble because God is on their side. The priest was ready to die. He knew that if he fell, the messenger would show up. Ryoma would definitely stop Walter's twisted plot. Walter just burst out laughing. Suddenly, the cultists on the floor started twitching like zombies, their bodies contorting, as they stood back up. Just as John was about to finish off the priest, a gunshot rang out. Ryoma literally blasted through the wall and walked right in. Behind him, the floor was covered in defeated zombies. He had questions for the priest, but it looked like now wasn't the best time. He swiped away John's fireball like it was nothing and freed the priest. Even then, Walter didn't look worried at all. Glowing lines on the floor started flowing toward the idol. The zombies scrambled back up once more, launching a frenzied attack on the two of them. Taking down these weaklings was a piece of cake for someone as skilled as Ryoma. But while they were distracted by the mob, Walter and John used the chaos to slip through the massive doors and disappear. Walter sat before the god. As raw power surged into his body, his physical form began to mutate. The plan had finally reached its endgame. Darkness swallowed the room. A true miracle was about to descend, making every sacrifice worth it. Walter's body kept swelling and growing. By the time Ryoma reached him, it was too late. Walter swung a massive fist right at them. The white wolf reacted instantly, pulling the two of them to safety just in time. Then Walter's body shifted again, transforming into a terrifying demon. Ryoma shielded the priest inside a barrier and commanded his slimes to launch a sneak attack.
But Walter was insanely fast, dodging the fireballs in the blink of an eye. Ryoma realized that weak attacks were just going to get dodged.
He immediately ordered the white wolf to carry the slimes high into the air and charge. The slimes formed a circle
and rained down a barrage of shots on Walter. But even when they landed a hit, it barely left a scratch.
Ryoma put some muscle into it and hurled the slimes forward.
They spat out specialized power armor forged from the fire dragon's pearl.
With the extra speed, magic, and buffs, it worked like a charm. He finally managed to take down that cocky Walter, blasting right through half of his body. But he didn't expect Walter to be able to absorb outside energy to heal his wounds and grow even stronger, even with all the slimes focusing their fire. The heavy bombardment did absolutely nothing. Man, that dragon's blessing curse is the real deal. Wait, a curse? Something clicked in Ryoma's head. He fired an absolute zero curse straight at Walter's feet. Sure enough, his feet froze solid into blocks of ice. Enraged, Walter lashed out with all four of his arms. He launches an attack on Yuji, but the very second the barrier shatters, Yuji fires off a magic net, trapping Walter right there in midair. Then he unleashes a deadly hellfire. Raging flames swallow Walter in an instant. This crisis is turning out to be way easier to handle than Yuji expected, but Yuji senses something is wrong. Right before he died, Walter mentioned the cult. A second later, the divine device suddenly starts glowing intensely.
A purple light floods the entire underground space. All the zombies, and even Walter's body, turn into light,
getting sucked into a blinding radiance. A figure emerges alongside the stars, calling himself the Sage. With the death of this guide, the Sage shall descend. The priest always thought that after his own death, Yuji would be the one to descend as the Sage and save the world. He never imagined the guide actually referred to Walter. The word of God says, in ancient times, a messenger dared to challenge a true dragon, but died a tragic death, unable to withstand its power. And that's the Sage standing right here. To bring him back, Walter sacrificed himself and the lives of his followers, just to perform this god-summoning ritual. But this guy is definitely no god. Without a single word, the Sage blasts Yuji with a final hellfire. The explosion carves a terrifying crater right out of the forest. Luckily, Yuji defended in time, but the brothers' castle has been completely trashed. Yuji orders the slimes to give the Sage a taste of justice and swarm him. But no matter how thick the attacks are, the Sage just tanks every single one. And he keeps firing back with that final hellfire. After a full round of fighting, the Sage doesn't have a single scratch on him. Instead, Yuji's mana is more than half gone, while this guy's magic seems totally bottomless. Yuji has the slimes gather up high, using a massive area freeze to drop a giant ice ball right on the Sage's head. The Sage puts up a magic barrier, shattering the ice ball effortlessly. Seizing the moment the ice breaks, Yuji fires off 10 more fireballs. The terrifying fireballs slam the defenseless sage into the dirt. But even at the center of the explosion, he's still completely unscathed. Without missing a beat, the sage stacks 10 ultimate annihilation flames against Yuji. Yuji returns the favor with the exact same spell. These two terrifying powers collide, and in the end, Yuji's skill pulls through. The sage vanishes into a sea of fire.
But Yuji's magic points have dropped into the negatives again. And once the smoke clears, the sage appears once more totally fine.
This time, he doesn't attack Yuji. Instead, he raises his hand high, claiming to offer salvation to the world. Scattering purple light activates the blue moon of salvation. Rainmakers hidden across the land power up, and an ominous purple mist blankets the entire continent. Soon, a cursed rain starts pouring down. So this is what he calls salvation. The legendary sage wants to destroy the world because he's just tired of saving it. He thinks no matter how many times he saves it, the world will always face another crisis. He figures it's better to just end it all. If there's no world, there's nothing left to save. So the sage uses his artificial rain skill to mix the power of the curse into the water. Yuji notices. The slimes he left in every city are sending back reports. Any monster touched by the rain becomes insanely violent. This is the sage's way of saving the world. As he speaks, the sage blasts an ultimate annihilation flame at Yuji. A normal barrier can't even touch an attack of that level. Yuji has no choice but to fire back with his own flame. The two massive attacks collide, exploding violently in the air. But then the slimes bring more bad news. Hordes of monsters are starting to march toward every city. Yuji blocks the sage's attack with one hand, while using magic to push back the monsters with the other. But there are just way too many of them. He can't protect everyone by himself, especially while trying to fight the sage at the same time. Before long, his mana usage pushes him way over the edge, and he falls into a status abnormality. Just then, the Dryad sends word the adventurers in Falstein are all gathered in the plaza, ready to take on the monsters. Yuji was the one who saved the city before, but now that he's not there, they have to stand on their own 2 feet. And it's not just Falstein. Every single city Yuji ever helped is mobilizing on its own. Adventurers are joining hands, teaming up to face this monster crisis together. Yuji was so used to doing everything solo, just keeping his head down and fighting. But things are different now. He has so many comrades fighting right alongside him. After using the slimes to give everyone a massive buff, Yuji can finally breathe and focus entirely on the sage. Right then, the priest receives another oracle. When the sun and moon overlap and become one with the starlight, God will strike down his judgment.
But Yuji looks up at the clouds covering the sky. There's no sun or moon in sight. Whatever, he's just gonna keep fighting till it's over.
Yuji downs a mana reversal potion, resetting his magic to how it was 10 minutes ago, and stands tall before the sage once more. The sage asks him why he's protecting this world. Is it just because it's a sage's duty? Yuji thinks back on all the people he's met along the way. As for everything he'd been through, he just casually mentioned that he actually thinks this world is all right after all.
Between one sage and another, it was time for the final showdown. The sage kept unleashing waves of annihilation flames,
launching attack after attack at Yuji. He had infinite mana meaning in this fight. Yuji would definitely hit his limit first. Plus, regular attacks didn't do a single thing to him. But just then, a countdown for Heaven's Judgment suddenly lit up on Yuji's status screen. This happened before during the Blue Dragon raid. Could this be the divine punishment from the Oracle? Yuji didn't hesitate for another second, unleashing Heaven's Judgment right at the sage. A terrifying pillar of light fell from the sky, slamming into him, and he crashed to the ground, screaming in agony. But even after that hit, the prompt didn't disappear. Yuji realized this meant he could strike multiple times. So without a word, he used Heaven's Judgment to shock the sage until he was literally smoking. Even so, divine punishment wasn't enough to put the sage down for good. Yuji pulled out the Kasei's dagger, deciding to bet it all on one last play. Now completely enraged, the sage prepared his most powerful attack. At the very last second of the countdown, Yuji hurled the dagger into the air. Having absorbed the power of divine punishment, the blade exploded with terrifying energy.
Patterns of the sun. Moon and stars formed in the sky, the exact moment from the oracle where the sun and moon overlap, becoming one with the starlight.
Yuji caught the dagger and dove from the sky just as the sage launched his ultimate move. 6 magical barriers instantly surrounded them, with the outermost being a massive sandstorm array for total isolation. The sage's attack was completely trapped inside. Yuji then drove the dagger straight into his chest. While the sage watched in pure disbelief, his body shattered into fragments. The surging power of the divine punishment tore through the barrier, scattering the dark clouds in the sky. Yuji stood there radiating a light as brilliant as a morning star. Then he hit the ground completely exhausted and not giving a damn how he looked. The world was saved once again. As Yuji reread that oracle, he finally understood that with the death of the guide, the sage would descend. The guide didn't mean him. It referred to Walter and the previous sage. With their deaths, a new sage would be born into the world, and that person was Julius. Under the cover of night, Julius left Orderine, a city controlled by the blue moon of salvation. Just as he stepped away from the city of magic, a rowdy victory celebration was starting inside. But the blue moon of salvation wasn't done yet. They'd lost contact with Walter, and the failed ritual caused all his subordinates to vanish. But they didn't care about those setbacks. The world purification device was almost finished. Once activated, the entire continent would be wiped out. But their true goal wasn't just destruction. It was to kill the Black Dragon of Destruction, a beast even a sage couldn't beat. It's just one thing after another. While Julius was worrying about what to do next out in the wilderness, he found his campsite surrounded by beasts. A massive Mohican tiger appeared right in front of him. Pairs of vicious eyes lit up in the darkness. The next day, Julius arrived at a new city and dragged the frenzied tiger from the quest board, all the way to the Adventurers Guild. The receptionist was absolutely floored. In her mind, a monster that powerful could never be taken down by just one person. So she asked Julius to bring the rest of his party inside. But when Julius said he didn't have teammates, she broke down in tears. She thought the poor kid just couldn't accept that his friends died in the fight, and that he'd lost his mind hallucinating that he was alone. The receptionist was getting so emotional that Julius didn't even know how to explain himself. That's when the guildmaster Micaiah walked over. After checking the tiger's carcass closely, he confirmed the beast was killed by a single person's attribute magic. As soon as he heard Julius was a mage, everything clicked. There had been rumors about a person like this, someone who single-handedly protected a city from a massive monster horde, and even took down the legendary Blue Dragon, a warrior who could use magic like a true master. The moment Julius's name was mentioned, every adventurer in the room turned their eyes toward him. Now that he's famous, how is Julius going to handle all this attention?